Have you ever felt like life puts impossible obstacles in your path just to watch you give up? That there are roads so difficult they're not even worth trying? That it's better to settle for what's safe, even if it takes more time, even if it costs you more energy? Today, I want to tell you a story that changed the way I see challenges. A story about a boy with no name, no title, nothing, except the courage to take a step when everyone else stood still. Once upon a time, there was a small kingdom hidden between two enormous hills. On one of them, people grew grapes and olives under the sun. It was peaceful, kind, generous. But the other hill was different. There the wind blew so hard that no one dared to climb it. They called it the Hill of Wild Wind. And between that kingdom and the sea, there was only one road. A long, exhausting road that went around the quiet hill. It was safe, yes, but also endless. Everyone knew that if you crossed over the Hill of Wild Wind, you'd reach the sea in half the time. But nobody did it. They said, "The wind will push you down. You'll lose everything. You'll fall. You'll die." And so, generation after generation, people walked the long road. Without thinking, without questioning, because that's how it had always been done. The king watched this every morning from his window, and something inside him broke. My people avoid what's difficult, he thought. They don't see how strong they truly are. They live in fear, and fear makes them small. One morning, the king gathered his sons, his knights, and all the people in the great hall. His voice rang out firmly. "You all know the Hill of Wild Wind. Today I'm going to plant our flag at the top. Whoever brings it back before sunset will receive gold, land, and my trust." Silence fell like a stone. The eldest prince stepped forward, strong and confident. The second prince smiled calmly, trusting his intelligence more than his hands. The youngest prince stayed back, quiet and unsure. And near the door, almost invisible, stood Marcus, a thin boy who worked in the stables. Rough hands, worn shoes. He had come only to listen. But something in the king's words ignited something inside him. The doors opened. The challenge began. The eldest prince arrived first at the foot of the hill, dressed in heavy armor and a bright cloak. At the first bend, the wind caught him like a sail. His cloak billowed. He stumbled, cursed, tried again, and finally turned back. "This wind is madness," he said. "My father asks the impossible." The second prince didn't even try. "There has to be a smarter way," he said. "I'm going to design a tunnel." And he returned to the castle to draw maps. Two knights tried together, raising their shields and pushing forward. But the wind broke their formation again and again. Soon they returned, breathless and defeated. A pair of merchants climbed a few steps, felt the wind pulling at their clothes, and decided the prize wasn't worth the risk. The sun rose higher. People watched the empty hillside and shook their heads. No one had reached even halfway. Marcus stood in the crowd, his heart beating fast. He approached the king and whispered, "Your Majesty, may a stable boy try?" The hall fell silent. Some men began to smile mockingly. "A stable boy? He'll fly like a feather," they said. But the king looked Marcus in the eyes. He saw fear there, but he also saw something else. A small spark, a flame. "Yes," said the king. "Go." The hill doesn't distinguish between princes and stable boys. Marcus bowed and walked alone toward the slope. The first gust nearly knocked him to the ground. His eyes filled with tears. His legs trembled. Fear embraced him like cold hands. He remembered all the days he had taken the long road around the hill, returning home late and tired. "Maybe I'm tired," he thought, "because I always avoid what's difficult." He pulled his cloak tight against his body. He tied a rope around his waist and fastened it to a large stone at the first turn. "If I fall," he thought, "I won't fall far. I'll get up again." Step by step, he climbed. He leaned forward when the wind pushed him. He shielded himself when it struck from the side. And when a rare gust pushed from behind, he let it help him a little. He learned the wind as he moved. He didn't fight with rage. He adapted. He listened. Sometimes he slipped onto his hands. Sometimes he fell to his knees. The ground scraped his palms. His breathing became harsh, but each time he rose again. From below, people watched that small figure climbing. No armor, no shield, just steady steps. The youngest prince watched too, feeling something he couldn't name. Marcus reached the middle of the hill. The wind there was wild, pulled at his hair, stole his breath. For a moment he wanted to stop. He looked down. The long road around the hills looked thin and distant. He saw how people walked it every day, year after year, never changing. He whispered, "I didn't come this far to give up." He stood up, gathered what strength he had left, and kept climbing. At last he reached the top. The flag stood wedged between the rocks, shaking in the wind. Marcus threw himself to the ground, crawled forward, and grabbed it. His hands trembled, but he held it tight. He didn't celebrate. He just breathed. And then he began the descent. Now the wind felt different. He understood its rhythm. It no longer frightened him. When he reached the foot of the hill, the crowd fell silent. Then cheers erupted like a wave. The king approached with his sons. He took the flag from Marcus's hands and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Today," said the king, "a stable boy climbed what princes and knights wouldn't face. You didn't wait for the wind to call you. You didn't look for an easier path. You walked toward the hill." The eldest prince looked away. The second prince folded his map. "Tell us," said the king gently, "what did you learn up there?" Marcus answered quietly, "At first, the wind seemed too strong, but the more I climbed, the more I learned how it moved. The hill didn't change. The wind didn't change. I changed." The king nodded. "Remember this. Obstacles don't come to stop us. They come to train us. If we run from them, we stay small. If we face them, we become stronger than we were." From that day on, a new road was built over the hill of Wild Wind. The king asked Marcus to help because he knew the hill better than anyone. People crossed it slowly at first. Some were afraid, but each time they climbed, they grew braver. And when the wind touched their faces, many of them smiled. Friends, we all have our own hills of wild wind. Fear, pain, doubt. If we always walk around them, nothing changes. But when we face them, they shape us. Obstacles aren't here to break us. They're here to make us strong. And remember this, the hill in front of you is never the real enemy. The real enemy is that quiet voice that tells you to wait, that it's not the right time, that tomorrow will be better. If you listen to it, nothing in your life will ever move. But when you take one step toward the wind, your world begins to open. Not because the challenge becomes smaller, but because you become bigger. If this story touched something in you, leave me a comment telling me what your hill of wild wind is. And if you think someone else needs to hear this today, share it. See you in the next story.